and thank you for joining us for Alma Normalization Rules. We have with us today guest lecturer, Mr. Hanoch Roniger from the Cataloging Department of the Department of Asian Studies at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Hanoch, thanks a lot for your time and for your willingness to share your knowledge with us. Hanoch has a lot of experience with creating normalization rules and for helping other people with the syntax. So considering his knowledge, considering his willingness to share that knowledge, we invited him as a guest lecturer and he happily and willingly obliged, and we thank him very much for that. And without further ado, Hanoch, I will make you the presenter and you can take it away. And one moment, you will be the presenter.
Thank
There
you.
you go. Take it away, Hanoch.
Yeah. Thank you, Yoel. So before we start, I just wanted to apologize. English is not my native tongue, so if I make mistakes, if I stutter, I apologize. And also, it has been a day, so I hope I will have the same amount of energy as in the morning. So what I wanted to start with is what I wanted to talk about is the normalization rules in Alma. This will not be a tutorial of basics how to use it. It will be more shining a light on how you can use it, more advanced applications of NRs, and I want to show some things to be aware of and avoid, perhaps. So first of all, I wanted to thank Yoel for picking up the gauntlet and allowing me to have this webinar with you. Also, Ismail Gallen, I think I saw you here for asking for this. Chagai Bar from Tel Aviv University for letting me know that Regex exists in NR, and for everyone who sent their suggestions and requests, allowing me to focus more here on what you want. So the first thing that the presentation will be divided into 3 parts. It will start with just straightforward NR as intended, without any funny business, without bending the rules. Then we'll go for the second part, seeing a bit of bending of the rules, and the third part will be really off the charts using regex, which is something that you'll see when we get there. And so the first thing that I was asked is to speak about the differences between the different rules that exist within Alma. So first of all, NR is a code that was created by Libris and is used to make changes in bibliographic or holding records, and can make global changes in these records as well. There are some cons. The syntax is limited. It doesn't have the same freedom a regular or a real language, coding language will offer, but on the other hand, it is built into Alma. You can run it natively. You don't need to export a record, manipulate the data, and import it again. It can all be done within Alma and even configured to run on specific hooks. So the first part that I was asked to do is to explain the differences between merge rules, indication rules, and normalization rules, and when we would want to use each of them. So merge rules as per the namesake, is used when you merge two records, either from an external source and one record from your repository, or two records from the repository. The syntax is different than NR syntax, but there is documentation, and I will only want to show something small to be aware of. Indication rules are used to create sets based on parameters that might not be indexed in the advanced search. They use the same syntax as normalization rules, except that they contain a when condition that can be as complex as you want. And the only function that runs is set indication true. And you can also create them with a form. And I believe Yoel showed it yesterday for anyone that wasn't attending. And the third one is normalization rules, which I talked about, used to manipulate data inside the bibliographic or holding records. And this will be the main subject of today's webinar. So the first thing that I wanted to show is the configuration. I won't take too much time showing it, but it is important. So if you go to resources, processes, you have the various processes. If you create a process that just has a single, I'll show you the process that runs on save at our institution. You have a task list. You can add other task and select the order in which they run. You can see here we have marked rule normalization, and under the task parameters, you can select the specific rule to run. So we have two that run every time we save, because our on-save normalization rule exceeded the allotted amount of data that can be entered in a single rule. So this is where you specify a process. If you create a process here, you can make a process that you can run through enhance the record, or set it up to run on other occasions. So the second place that we will look at in configuration menu is the external search resources. Here you can specify, if you edit the specific resource that you want, here OCLC, you can specify which normalization rule to run and which merge method to run on every record that is imported. So now we'll go back to here. So as stated, merge rules are used when you merge two records. And I just wanted to show that there is a the difference in functions in the functionality of the functions when you merge records with external resources as opposed to two records from your repository. So when you merge from external resources, all the functions are from the point of view of the record on the right, the external resource record. So for example, replace will replace fields from the imported record. It will put in the fields from your existing repository record. So here you can see that replace will keep the fields on the left-hand record. On the other hand, when you're using merge for merging two records from your repository, it's the other way around. Replace will keep only the fields that are on the right-hand side. So it's something to keep in mind when you use merge rules.
Could I just state one
Yeah,
thing, please, Hanoch? The
yeah,
difference is what is the preferred record? The preferred
yeah,
one, whether you're importing or working on something that exists. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. So now indication rules, I won't go over it. I just said it before. So let's, are there any questions before I move to the basic use of normalization rules?
I don't see anything in the chat so far.
Very well. So we'll start the first second. So the basic normalization rule will have to contain a name, rule and a name, a when condition, then some function and the end. And it can contain more than one rule per NR that you save. Now, the first part that we need to go over when talking about normalization rules are conditionals. We have two conditionals in NR syntax, a when condition and an if condition. The when condition is more versatile. It can receive and or Boolean operators, whereas the if function can only receive an or Boolean operator, and only when you compare the the contents of a specific subfield. You cannot, for example, use a single if to check if you have both A subfield and Z subfield on the same field. The scope of the conditionals is also different. You can a when condition can check any field in the record, and they can check more than one in a single run, whereas the if is tied to a single function, and it can only check a single parameter as stated. And when the condition is met, a when condition will run everything between then and end. And the if condition will only apply to the specific function on which to which it is attached. And also, a when condition will reflect the state before any manipulation was done, whereas the if condition will reflect the current state of affairs after any manipulation done by the same NR. So now we'll go ahead, just a small example, and then we'll move into Alma. The conditionals here are supposedly the same, but the if condition will run, the function will run, each function will run if the if condition is met, whereas on the other side, a when condition, if any of the conditions, if the condition is met, any of these exist, all the fields will be deleted. So just keep it in mind when you're writing your normalization rules. So now we'll go into Alma again, into the metadata editor, and I wanted to show some functions as they are intended, but show the difference. So the first example we'll see is the difference between the if condition and the when condition. Here I will add a temporary field, then check it with an if condition. If it exists, it will state that it exists based on the if condition. If not, it will say it does not exist. And the same goes for the when conditions that will check it on the third and fourth step. So now we'll preview it here. And you can see that the if condition did manage to identify the field that we just added. And the when condition did not, because this field was added by the same NR. So this is something that you need to take into account, and this is part of the reason why I prefer if conditions. So the second function that I wanted to show some differences is the copy field. And I wanted to show the difference between just copying a field without specifying a subfield versus if you specify the subfield. So when you don't specify anything, it will copy the entire field as is. If you specify a subfield, it will only copy the first iteration of this subfield within the field that is copied. So now change subfield is a very useful function for reordering subfields. So if we want to bring the B subfield to the end, we can just change it into itself and it will jump to the end. This is unlike the function move to the end, which we'll see in a minute, that not only moves the subfield to the end, it also removes every duplicate subfield. It will only keep the first one. And this is what we can see here with move subfield to the end of field. And we can do the same with change subfield except first and removing the subfield. So these both will remove redundant A subfields, but will function differently. The first method that uses two functions together will keep the order, and the second one will move the subfield that was touched to the end. So it's something to keep in mind and just consider what your needs are. Now, correct duplicate subfields. What I wanted to show with this is that the function might not work depending on, as intended, depending on what you put in. So in this instance, you can see that the one that is duplicate in 041 is the first one and the second one, and in 042, it's the second and the third. And this function will only work on the first one. If the subfield that you are trying to deduct is not the first instance, it won't work. If you want to do this, you would have to resort to some manipulation, and you can see it here. What we will do is split the subfield first, then run the more stable function, correct duplicate fields, and then combine it again. So this is something that you would have to do. Of course, it won't be applicable for every situation. It will only work if you're dealing with a non-repeatable field. So, and the next thing I wanted to show is that combine fields is also a function that sometimes doesn't work as intended. So in this instance, we will copy the fields to 546, and then we'll try to combine them. And what we will get is the NR not working and no indication of why it is. It even doesn't mention that it's broken. And this is because we created fields by copying them and then trying to merge them, and this apparently does not it is not aware that this field exists. In order to solve this problem, we can either add the field by the NR. You can just, and then it will work. or you can do it on a field that already exists in the record. And then it won't break.
Hanoch, there was a request if you could make your screen larger. Maybe if you do a Control Plus.
Yeah, let's try.
It'll make a little bit bigger. Okay, yeah, that's already bigger. Yeah, you don't want to go too big because then the resolution will ruin your records. But
yeah,
one more Control minus, I think, will be. Yeah, that's nicer.
so we'll see the
Thanks.
entire. Of course. Thank
And
you.
people also ask, by the way, if there's going to be a recording. Yes, we are recording this as we speak.
Yeah. So the next function that I wanted to show you is replace contents functions. These are probably the most useful functions that you will find in R. What I wanted to speak about is first that the asterisk is greedy. So in this instance, it wants to take from
Could you,
the E.
Hanoch, could you elaborate what you mean by greedy here?
Yeah, greedy, it means that it will try to catch as many instances as it can while still being true. So from the capital E until a space means it won't take the first instant of the space, but will try to catch as many spaces as it can here. So if we'll look at it, it will change everything, not just the first word. So this is the first thing that I wanted to show. The second one, I will just open the second record. No, I will have to edit. Oh, it appears. So the second line I wanted to show is that when you replace a specific string, it will replace every instance of the same string it finds. So you might want to put on a condition that will avoid changing things that you want. So if not exists, for example, and then it won't mess the first one. And the third point that I wanted to show about these functions is that replace contents only first is a bit of a misleading name. If we look at 041, I would guess that it would only change the first T into a capital T. But as you can see, it will change both instances, but only on the first instance of this subfield. So replace contents only first, it means replace all the contents only in the first subfield. So these are the functions that I wanted to show here, and we'll finish this section with a straightforward NR without any bending of the rules, just basic functions for converting a record into RDA. If I was really running it, I would put in more text, but I just wanted to show things. The only functions that build on each other are the ones that add the subfields for 336, 337, and 8. So what it does, it checks that it is a language monograph based on the LDRs 6 and 7, then changes the first, the position 18 into I, adds 040 RDA, changes to 60 into 64, first indicator, second indicator 1, and opens some of the, I don't know how to call it, the P dot and the ILL dot. So this is just the basic NR and the use that you can make without doing anything out of the ordinary. So until here, are there any questions, Yoel?
Yes, there is a question. Someone says, is there a way to access a specific field if there are duplicates? So, for example, if there are 3 700s and
Yeah.
I want to make a rule that only affects the second 700.
Um, unfortunately, unless you have something within the field that will separate it from other fields, the only way I can see of doing it is by combining all the fields together and then extracting them one at a time and doing the manipulation on the second extraction, which is a bit risky because first of all, you will have to put placeholder subfields for every subfield that can potentially be available in a given subfield. And if it's repeatable, as many placeholders as there can be. If not, the whole extraction process won't work. So I would suggest if you want to edit only the second one, find something within the second one that can be identified by the if condition, and then it will apply only to this. So now we'll move on to more advanced uses of normalization rule. So the first thing, oh, yeah, I saw the chat. Yes, if you look at the documentation, you don't have to use 4 slashes. You can use 2. I think it's in the beginning of the documentation. It was changed sometime.
There's funny situations. The four usually works also, and there's these extreme cases where 2 will not work, but you got to test them out. I think 4 is safer, but I don't want to contradict anything here. Maybe there's certain situations. For example, when a period is at the end of a string, I think it behaves differently than if it's in the middle. But
from my experience, 2 was enough for periods, but
okay.
there might be
All
other
right.
situations. I'm not sure. As Yoel said, I would suggest always checking your NR and seeing if it does what you think it should do and it doesn't do anything that you are not
Yeah,
intending.
definitely before running it on a large set.
Yeah. So the first thing for advanced usage of NR is using subfields or adding suffixing strings to the end of a subfield is very useful for you creating a complex if condition, which will that way you can bypass the limitation of only one condition. So in this instance, I want to delete the 020 field if it doesn't have subfield A or subfield B. This is impossible to do with an if condition without a bit of funny business. So here you can see that I'm adding a subfield, a temporary subfield, if it has an A. Same goes for if it has a Z, and then removing it. I could go around the other way and say if it doesn't exist, remove the Z. So it depends on the situation what is more convenient. And here also always remember to delete the temporary subfields. So here you can see that it only kept the first iteration of the 020 field. It deleted the one that did not contain A or Z. So the second example that I wanted to show is using information from a different field to use in an if condition. If you remember, an if condition can only check the field that it is connected to. So in this instance, I want to change the first indicator of 245 based on if 100 field exists. It should be 1 if there is an 100 and 0 if there is no 1xx field. So this is just a basic thing. So first we will add a subfield to 245, which is the field that we want to check. Then we will replace it with the 100A. So it would still be Z if we didn't have the 100. And then we change the indicator based on whether it is still Z or no. So for example, if I change it to 700, and this is a good place to show this, since I just clicked on preview, it doesn't always show the correct thing. Now it did, but I'll speak about it later. So now it didn't make the condition true, so it didn't change it. So if we'll do it again, and also, like I mentioned previously, just remove subfield Z at the end. So it will be clean. Yeah, so the next thing that I wanted to show is actually something from the examples in the examples page of Libris of how to add double dollars since in 2018 June, I think, any NR that had double dollars stopped working because Libris decided that it was not to be used in NRs. So this is a way you can add $B, for example. You add it with a separator and then remove the separator, and you end up with a $B with a subfield marker. But what I wanted to show you is I will now open our unsave NR, and we'll replace the double dagger with double dollar signs using the same method. So I will save it in our unsave, and I will save it once. And you can see that it will change the double daggers into a double dollar sign. But if we will search for the record, you will see that something is wrong. Alma does not recognize these double dollar signs as a subfield marker. If it is done this way, either by global change by running a job or on save, it will only identify it as a subfield marker on a second manual save. And then it will identify it and everything will be as intended. So what I would like to show you is the double dagger. Let's restore it to the previous state. I didn't dismiss the the unsave, so I won't be able to show it, but a different way to do this would be to use the split subfield function and then change the second subfield into what you want. So you can see this will be identified by Alma as a subfield separator. So this is a different way of doing this, a better way one might add, but it will only work if you know to which subfield you want to change the things, and you need to take into account that if, for example, we had other subfields, the one that we changed will go to the end. So it will mess up your order. So it's something to keep in mind. And this concludes the second part. If there are any questions, I will answer them. And if not, we'll move on to the third part.
There is a question, however, I'm not sure if this is going to relate to how many people or yourself. There's something called normal extensions, and it's possible to make a normalization rule to add a local extension. It simply adds a subfield 9 to the end. I don't think it's primarily used for consortia.
Okay.
So I don't
We
know
do
if it's
use
really
it.
something.
We do use it. Not the
Okay.
what you said, but $9 is something that we use in Israel, but probably for another
Yeah.
another function.
Okay.
We
I'm
add
sending the
these.
person okay. In any case,
I
I'm sending the person a presentation about it.
Yeah, and I would be happy to learn about it. Perhaps it has applications that are useful to us. So I will be
Okay.
happy to also receive it. So thank you. And
Okay.
the third part of our presentation is the uncharted part. So first of all, and Yoel will want to speak about it. Do you want to have?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So Hanoch is going to talk about the regular expressions. When we put in the functionality to write the normalization rules, we being Ex Libris, we use these Java rules, which is a standard library, not library like the building with books and other things, a group of codes that can be used to do various manipulation of data. Part of those drools includes regular expressions. We took the drools and we changed them for the library world. For example, the regular Java drools do not include anything like add a new subfield or change second indicator because most of the world doesn't have second indicators or repeatable subfields, non-repeatable subfields. So some of the original functionality of these drools, such as regular expressions, is still there. However, it's not part of the official supported normalization rule functionality that we have. But it still works because that's um, uh, the original part of the drools. Go ahead, Hanoch.
Yeah. So as the disclaimer, these are undocumented and unsupported. They, in a way, we are tapping into the architecture of the NR syntax in a way that Ex Libris did not intend. But it is very useful and offers us things that are not available using straightforward NR syntax. So it's something that I think is worthwhile. And the following things that I will show are based on my testing different fields and what works, what doesn't work. So first of all, regular expressions are in essence used to search for a match of a pattern. So within Alma, a function will only be used if it matches this pattern. So in a way, it is a second layer of conditions, and if conditions can be added on top of it. So it allows us for a very complex manipulation. And they can be used to change a specific position within a string. So you don't need to change it into a control field. Make your manipulation and convert it back to a regular field, like what I used to do before I found out about regex. And so these are my findings, and then we'll show in Alma. This, from my testing, only works with replaced contents, but that's not bad because it's very versatile. The meta characters that did work for me are start of string, end of string, just any character. It's a placeholder for any character. Checking if the previous character or string appears 0 to 1 iterations, 1 or more. The asterisk, the wildcard, just like in normal NR syntax. Curly brackets for putting a length of a string, and regular parentheses for having either marking a string or a character to be used on the second part of the function, or to use as for checking several characters or strings. We'll see it in the next slide and in the examples in Alma. What I found out didn't work is anything with a slash. So a word, digit, and anything within square brackets, such as any character between 1 and 9, or not a, such things that appear in regular expressions within brackets or with a slash do not seem to work in NR syntax. So this is an annotated example that I wanted to show because I think it can help you understand the basics if you are not familiar with regex, and apply it to your needs. So here, this function will search for a 2, 6 something field, subfield C. It will check the first of, it searches for the start of the string. Then it doesn't matter how many characters. And then it searches for 4 digits, because we have here either 0, 1 to 9. And it should appear 4 times. And then followed by any amount of characters. And it will replace it with a square bracket, the first part that is within parentheses, which in this case is the 4 digits, and then close brackets and a period. And just so you know what each thing here would do, the $1 would be the first thing in parentheses, so the 4 digits. The second $2 would only be the thing within the second one, so 1 digit, but the last digit that it finds, because the wildcard is greedy and will try to match the maximum amount of the subfield content until it encounters the thing within parentheses. And 0 will be the whole matched segment. And just as I mentioned, if it finds a match, it will run, and if it doesn't find a match, it won't do anything. And now I want to go back to just a second, to go back to our Alma and show you an example of a regex. Here I'm using regex to change ISBN 10 into 13. This is the whole NR. This is something that I made up to have mathematical functions that are not available in Alma, in NR syntax. So this is the first digit and so on, and this is the manipulation, and you can see it changed it and added the checksum based on what it found on the calculation. So this is what I would suggest the better method. The old method would use a separate field, and you would have to, it would only run on a single instance of 020 because it uses a different field, and you cannot choose which field to bring back. So the only way to run it on multiple fields is to compress them using the combine fields function, extracting each one and running the whole code on it for each instance until you are finished. So this would be the better option, and it doesn't have this limitation. You can have as many ISBNs as you want, and it will do the correct calculation based on the digits that appear on the specific subfield. And you can see here. So it's much safer than the other way. And the last thing that I wanted to show is the example of the auto-populate. I am 2 versions above this. I do contribute them to the community zone, and they do appear on my Google Drive, which is linked from Libris's examples page. This is quite a complex NR, which updates 008 fields based on the data that it finds within the record. So in this instance, you can see that it parsed the date. It knows how to parse detailed dates. It takes into account to only do it on certain types of records, and it takes, for example, the illustrations, put the illustration code, the dictionaries from the genre also appear here, the index from 500 field, and it updated the language based on the 041 field. And you can expand it however you want. And this is something that I wanted to show. And of course, if you decide to use different types of dates, it also knows how to use them. So I am expanding this NR constantly and contributing it. So if anyone wants it, I think this shows the potential of NR usage, because this is something that before we moved to Alma, I didn't think we could do automatically. And the last thing that I wanted to show are a bit of general notes. So always check your NR with multiple variations. You need to take into account multiple contingencies, because you want to make sure that the NR functions as you want and that it doesn't have unintentional changes that it might do. So always check all instances that you can think of. And when you're testing the NR, what I wanted to show is that if we'll change here, we'll change the date here and click on preview, it doesn't show the state of affairs. So you have to either click within here or make sure that what you see is actually the current state of the record. So another thing that you should avoid is using emojis or things from the end of the Unicode table. I thought it was a good way to mark an end of a subfield or the start of a subfield, but when I used it a few years ago, it deleted a random space from the NR each time it was saved. So it worked the first time, the second time, and the third time it broke the NR. So it's something you should avoid. You can use this to insert any Unicode character from plane 0 that uses 4 digits for the character. If you try to use 5, it will just match the 4 and add the 5th character that you added after the character that it changed. And unless your NRs are for your own personal use, I strongly suggest using annotations and using you can either do it with a hash symbol or with double slashes, backward slashes, I think, for comments. And as I mentioned, a selection of my NRs can be found in my Google Drive. I upload it there and it's open to the public. This auto-populate NR, I update it in the community and I upload new editions every time I add or fix something. And I want to encourage you to use the mailing list because you can always find help there. So if you're not using it, I would suggest using it. For me, specifically, anything that talks about NR moves to my inbox. So if nobody else will answer, I will try to answer. So Yoel, I think we had a question or
Let me take a look here. Do Alma normalization rules offer any features that are not also available in MarkEdit? Let me just give a little comment on that if you don't mind,
yeah,
Hanoch, beforehand.
yeah,
The advantage of the Alma normalization rules over the MarkEdit is you're doing it at various stages within Alma. The MarkEdit can integrate with Alma. There is a way to integrate so that you can use the MarkEdit directly on the database. However, you can't use it in all of the places that you can when you're using Alma. For example, when exporting via a general publishing profile or importing via an import profile, if you make a set, you can automatically do it on the set without needing to start integrating with another product. It's built in, so that's the main goal, the main advantage. Go ahead, Hanoch. Sorry to
yeah.
take your time.
That is exactly what I would have said. That the main, like I stated at the beginning, the main advantage is that it's built in and you can configure it to run on save when you import. You can also create a process to have it enhance the record while you are cataloging it and not wait for it to be exported and imported or in MarkEdit via API changed. So yeah.
Let me see if there's any other questions here. Wow, this is a long one. When you're planning these normalization rule batch update projects, have you considered downloading bib records from National Cataloging Agency rather than using normalization rules to update? For example, converting ISB 10 to 13 or upgrading to RDA. I'm curious how you determine whether to use norm rules to fix in Alma or get updated records from, I'll say, an external source.
Yeah.
He or she says National
Yeah.
Cataloging Agency. So
So
basically, when do you decide to take from another source and overlay rather than fix it in Alma?
um, I look how at the record, and if the record is garbage, I will overwrite it probably. But we do have things that are local fields, or we have materials that are not available in OCLC, or the record is not up to standards. Uh, we do have records that we catalog from scratch because we are dealing with materials sometimes that are in languages that are not available in other places. For example, I had a donation of books in Javanese and I didn't have anywhere to copy from. So I will always prefer to copy, but also OCLC itself does have errors. What my
Mm-hmm.
main focus is, I want to make a, to automate anything that is technical. I don't want errors to appear just because someone was not paying attention or something like that. So anything that can
Also,
be,
there's
yeah,
cases where, excuse me, Hanoch, there's
yeah,
cases where you can use a normalization rule while you're working. For example, normalize unsave. The normalize unsave feature can also use a normalization process. For example, take the language from the 041 and make sure it's the same as the language in the 008, or take the year, and if the year is empty, take it from somewhere else. So it's not just fixing records, it's on the fly while you're saving, while you're importing, doing certain things to them. Sorry, Hanoch, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. So I would say I'm not saying don't use other records from other external sources. I am all for it. I'm just saying that normalization rules can play a part in making them better, making sure that everything is up to standards. Old records in OCLC, for example, don't have correct ISBD punctuation. I did create for some fields better NR, for some fields, if they're repeatable, worse NRs, but we do automate the punctuation as well in our institution. So you can do many things that might make your job easier. That's my idea for NR. Yeah.
Let me see if there's anything else here, Hanoch. You did get, thanks a lot, Hanoch. Great presentation. I agree 100%. Someone says, when I create a local field in Alma, I lock it. Is there a way to code a lock in a normalization rule?
I'm not sure I understood. Is
I'm
it
not sure
the
I follow
022
either.
in the community, maybe? Because
Are you saying, person who sent it in, that you want your field to not get changed by somebody?
well, I will
Um,
say that I'm not aware of locking fields in a bib record except the ISSN within the community that is not available to be
yeah, and
edited.
it's not something the user has control
Yeah,
over. That's hard
but
coded by us.
currently there is no protection on normalization rules, and there are no versions. So you always need to keep a copy somewhere. And we did request this as an enhancement to have versions and perhaps have uh, not everybody have the right to edit normalization rules, but it is not currently an option in the current state of Alma. It's not a
You sent
feature.
in a request, Hanoch, to have like view versions like we have in the bib record
Yeah,
for
it's an
normalization rules?
yeah, I think it was in NERS, and we did send it also to Itai, and we
Okay.
were
I
in
must have
touch.
missed that one.
Yeah, we
Okay.
this is something that we are definitely uh, we do want to be added, and
Yeah.
I
So,
think
yeah.
would it be possible to add info regarding regex to the documentation? So this is up
I
to
think
you.
what we'll need to do is make a separate document on that. But yes, it is something, maybe a separate document on using unsupported regex in normalization rules, something to that effect. But yes,
I will be
there is
happy
a
to
place to.
help
Okay,
make it if
okay,
you want.
that
Yeah,
sounds good. Okay, Hanoch, we're unfortunately out of
yeah,
time, but this has really been fantastic, both this session and the session we did this morning. So thanks a lot for your time, and thanks for sharing and
yes.
your willingness. And if anybody else out there, by the way, this could be the beginning of a guest lecture series. If there's any other topics that anybody has worked on in their institution or their region or anything and wants to also give a lecture about something, send me a direct mail. I'm going to send out my mail here. which is a little dangerous. But if there's anyone out there who is willing to also be a guest lecturer, feel free to send it in and maybe you can also do it. So thanks again. And this recording will be on our YouTube channel and on the Education and Webinars page, as they always are. And you can view it there. And I'm sending out my mail right now, making sure there's no mistakes. Okay, thanks again, Hanoch.
Yes,
Have a nice day, everybody.
thank you, and
Bye-bye.
thank you for everyone that came.